Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It is myself, Justin Collery, with my partner in crime, Frank Prendergast. Frank, it's been another whirlwind week in the world of
It,
AI.
it really has. Yeah, I had my head down. I was kind of blinkered. I was working away. I was not paying attention to what was going on. And when I poked my head back up, wow, I was like, okay, a lot's been going on. And
In
including
that vein,
one of the
actually, yeah,
say that again.
I was saying interesting was that one comment I saw from Ethan Mollock this week, and he commented that this is just kind of like this. I've been similar. The head is down. He said if we stopped developing AI in the morning, there would still be 10 or 15 years of work just integrating the AI we have today into all of the systems that currently exist. And I mean, I think both of us sort of feel that to a certain extent that it's just heads down now, and it's like getting stuff installed and working and plugged in.
Yeah, it really struck me this week actually when I was working away on stuff and I'm just using ChatGPT now. It's just a constant buddy. Everything goes back and forth with me and ChatGPT. And we've talked before about like you and I, we kind of live in this filter bubble. And then when I talk to people who are outside of the filter bubble, and I just can't believe that they're not doing this, that they don't have this constant companion helping them. If I'm working late, even just and the brain is tired and I need to figure out, oh yeah, how can I say this but without using this word, or I've repeated this word 4 times in the last 2 paragraphs, but I'm too tired to figure out how to readjust it. ChatGPT is just there for me, and it's from that to the larger things like doing proposals, etc. And then I
Sure.
discovered that I talk to people and they still are not using it for anything maybe other than how they would use Google, which is the worst possible way you could use it.
And do you know what it is? I'm going to give a plug to my favorite AI company, which is Anthropic, because just this week they released Claude for Business. So, an enterprise version of their product. It's got a context window of 500,000 tokens. It's fully set up to be used by the enterprise. If you're running an enterprise, go use Claude, get it straight away. It's the best thing you'll ever do. Your developers, your copywriters, your everything will be at least 25% more productive. Just give it to them and get off your horse and stop messing around.
So
So
that
that's my
context window, like for anyone listening who maybe hasn't kind of dug in and isn't as immersed as we are, that 500K context window is a big deal because I mean, up until now, Google Gemini have been kind of like the one people turn to for having the largest context window, but like their publicly facing context window was still only, actually I've forgotten now, was it 128K? Was it, no, what was it? Can
for
you remember?
Gemini.
Gemini, yeah. It's
No, it's up
certainly
to a
not
million
500K.
tokens. No, no,
Isn't,
they can do
well,
up to.
yeah, but isn't that developer access or have they changed that?
Oh well, maybe the access I have, but certainly the
Yeah.
ones that I use have a million tokens. And I'll tell you why it's important because when I'm developing applications now, we would have spent 6 or 12 months ago quite a lot of time and effort developing RAG systems, the retrieval augmented generation. So you'd have a database and you'd go and you'd pull out the bits of the documents that you think are needed, or the bits of the code in my case that you think are needed, and then you go and generate your answer. But with these huge context windows, you don't want to do that anymore. You just want to grab the entire document and to put the context window into context. You see what I did there? 500,000 tokens is approximately 125,000 words. It's 2 or 3 books that you can throw into the context window with 100% recall accuracy. Generally, with the newer models, they're very, very good. So you don't have to worry so much about, my worldview is, if you can get away with it, don't do RAG. Just take everything, throw it into the context window, and move on from there. So, but Frank, would you pay 2 grand for it?
Well, I did. So I did spot this little bit of gossip about the two grand subscription model, and I was wondering, right? So this was an article that came out saying that OpenAI may indeed be on the cusp of releasing Strawberry or something similar, but that it might have a 2K price tag on it. Now, the reason I say bit of gossip is because we don't know where this information is coming from, because they did not seem able to specify within the article whether it was 2K per month, per week, per year. It was not clear. But what I was wondering was, with you holding your breath for the next release from OpenAI, are you going to be able to breathe if it's 2K subscription, or do you have to keep holding your breath?
It's really weird because I don't know what I do there. Look, you're a marketing guy, right? So, do you think, in years gone past, I was involved once in the political arena and stuff like that. It's nearly budget day here in Ireland. All right, that's coming up in about 2 months. And as we get closer to budget day, we're going to have these balloons floated where people say, "Oh, they're going to raise the price of a pint by an extra 15p or whatever it is," the usual stuff, to see how angry people get about certain things. And then when they discover what people are happy to accept and what they're not, then they quickly shuffle the papers in the budget, and that's what they do. Do you think that OpenAI are doing a bit of balloon floating here to see, price setting, maybe see what people's reactions are?
Well, it crossed my mind. It did cross my mind, but I honestly have no idea. It doesn't strike me as the kind of thing that they do, but at the same time, we talked before about Sam Altman's weird interactions on Twitter and whether they were appropriate for the CEO of a bit of a frontier model company. And so, while on one hand, I'm kind of like, it doesn't feel like the kind of thing they do. This feels more like some kind of leak or some kind of somebody knows somebody who heard from somebody's aunt. But because of the kind of stuff they do get up to be honest, yeah, maybe because every now and then they just do something that's like, what are they up to?
What would it have to do for it to be worth 2 grand? I mean, 2 grand a month is a lot of money. So, I mean, I find it hard to, I personally can't imagine, in fact, what it would do that would make it worth 2 grand a month. Is there anything you can think of that you would go, yeah, actually, for 2 grand a month, that's probably worth it, actually?
Well, so I'm never going to pay it, obviously. And
Never? Never is a big
well,
word, Frank.
well, I guess what I mean is, we've gotten very used to having access to these tools very, very cheaply, and probably, probably underpriced just to get us all on board. And I think the reason that you and I might differ slightly on the whole price thing is because much as I love generative AI and much as I love playing with the tools, using the tools for business, everything, I don't trust the tools. I would not trust them with anything critical that I could not assess myself immediately.
Yep.
If the tools, if this new release gives me the confidence to just say, okay, great, I don't even have to look at this now. AI, go do it. I trust you. Yes, to enterprise, of course, that's going to be worth a 2K, a 2K price tag, maybe possibly even per week, depending on what it can do for them.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends. Yeah, it depends on the level of trust that you would have to just let this thing off with kind of agentic capabilities.
Interesting. So that brings us, okay, so you're talking about agents here, and we saw this week. Now, I don't think, by the way, I think the 2000 is rubbish, and I don't think it's true. I think I would call bullshit on it, because Sam Altman's on record, I think, is saying that, their business is to make intelligence that's too cheap to measure, and sort of 2 grand a month goes against that whole sort of
Sure.
idea that it should be getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then we saw it interesting. There was a company this week called Altera, and this comes back to your thing about agents. And what Altera did is well, maybe you could summarize it. Altera basically set up a Minecraft instance with like thousands of AI agents.
Yeah, so it seems like they just gave AIs Minecraft user profiles and let them play Minecraft. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible. They I would so they released a short video with little snippets of what was going on, and I think they had various different servers with different agents collaborating in there. And they basically like formed communities, formed hierarchies. They all had different roles, and each of the Minecraft servers behaved like completely differently. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, if you put AI in, like this is what happens. They all evolved completely differently. But they all just had these little quick snippets and quick kind of summaries of some of the interesting things that have been going on in these communities. And some of them were mind-blowing. Like you and I were talking earlier about the one where, don't ask me how people went missing, but apparently people went missing from the community. And the community held meetings to discuss what they were going to do about these missing Minecraft players.
Isn't that brilliant?
And they had videos of the AI-controlled Minecraft players, like lighting torches and sticking them in the ground to light up the area at night so that people wouldn't get lost, or so that the lost people could find their way back, or like just crazy stuff. And the thing that struck me, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, go on. What struck you? And then I'm going to have to put something to you.
Well, I was watching these snippets going, I want to see more. I want to sit here and watch these AI communities evolve. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I mean, I don't watch reality TV, but one of the reasons I don't watch it is because it sucks you in and it becomes addictive, and you're spending hours then watching like somebody else's life. So this is really weird to me now, because I now want to sit there and watch this unreality evolve. And
Is that
it just
a very
struck me like,
interesting observation?
so, are we headed that way? Are we going to end up in a place where we're going to be like turning on the TV and yeah, watching unreality virtual shows?
Well, I tell you, just make them better looking than Minecraft, and I might watch it myself. You never know. There was two things that struck me. One was when the interactions become so human-like, when do they stop being non-human, right? That was kind of just because they were very human-like, the interactions.
Yeah.
But the other thing, right, is for people like me who are, and I haven't seen this argument made, but people like me who are like accelerationists and going, we should adopt this technology faster. It's fine. Stop your worrying. We're in the de Havilland communist phase, which is there'll be some accidents, but don't worry about it. We'll fix it as we go, right? You will notice, Frank, that in the Minecraft world, they didn't go around killing each other like cyborgs, like something from, an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Instead, they lit candles and put them out. So when somebody got lost, they demonstrated caring, right? They demonstrated concern for each other. And I mean, they don't know that each other are real, or if they're human or AI or anything like that, but they still demonstrated compassion. And for me, that's a very positive signal for AI in general and for creating super intelligence that says that, these AIs are likely to be kinder actually than most of the people you meet when you're walking down the shops.
They're just lulling you into a false sense of security, Justin. That's how they act in Minecraft. They're in Minecraft having secret meetings going, they're watching us, right? Everyone be nice to each other. Where did those missing villagers go, though, originally? That's the question you should be asking.
Well, and here's another interesting test, right? I wonder if they'll do this. So I don't know if you remember last year, the AIs started performing worse around December. And they figured that was because, it was Christmas, and the AIs figured, hey, it's Christmas. Nobody's working, so it's fine. So I wonder with the Minecraft one, when it gets closer to Halloween, will more people go missing and, strange things? So we should keep an eye on that. But look, super interesting tests. And I think there's real world applications here, because you have the wisdom of crowds, and they figure that if they can learn how to cooperate and do tasks in Minecraft, then the thinking is that if you adapt those behaviors in the real world, then these become very, very useful. And that's, certainly an interesting avenue of research. You also saw something this week to do with, again, with agents, and it was what's the guy? It was Salesforce, and the guy Mark Beinhoff has decided to reboot Salesforce.
Yeah, so that was it. Just caught my eye again, just because of the agent thing. So he is now pivoting to something he called Agent Force, which is from what I can tell, it's like an evolution of Salesforce, but you can now, like we were saying a minute ago, you don't have to do as much yourself. You can let the AI do the tasks within Salesforce for you. I think I wasn't actually clear by the end of the article, was Agent Force like a completely different thing, or was it something that operated within Salesforce? I couldn't get a full handle on it, and I'm not familiar with Salesforce at all. I had one look at it about 20 years ago, and
20 years
you know,
ago. So let me tell
as a
you, I'll
small,
tell you a little bit about Salesforce, right? So Salesforce now has grown to be this huge ERP system, right? It's massive. And Salesforce isn't just for sales folk. When you used it first, it might have been for sales folk on the road. But now you've got Salesforce for the health industry, and you've got Salesforce for the accounting industry, and Salesforce. So there's all these sort of different verticals where Salesforce have created very specialized solutions to tackle every type of vertical. And there was two stories that came out this week. First was that they were now going into agents, which is very interesting. And the second is they have this thing called Einstein or whatever it is. It's sort of hooked into
mm,
Salesforce. And they were going to allow you to use Claude 3.5, and it was going to hook into AWS Bedrock, which is interesting because it's going into their enterprise customers, right? That's what they're targeting. And I'm speaking slowly because it's Friday evening and you like to have a light-hearted conversation, right? But this for me actually goes, this is an important conversation. I don't think that companies like Salesforce can survive. I don't think there's a moat for them. So what you'll have noticed with Salesforce from the time that you used it to today is they've gone into all of these very specialized verticals, and they've created products and they sell it at a monthly cost, right? As software as a service. And we go back to our previous conversation about intelligence too cheap to measure. And what I can see happening is that as time goes on, it's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen in 6 months or 12 months. But as time goes on, it's going to get easier and easier to write software. And the economics of writing software fundamentally change. So you would have had companies before. I'll give you another example. There's a company called Epic Software, and Epic Software write healthcare. They write software for hospitals and stuff like that. And I read an article this week where they had done an implementation in a hospital in the US, and it took 1,000 engineers to implement this piece of software and cost $1 billion. Billion, right? That's going to go away, right? That's not going to happen anymore because, with 10 engineers and a very capable AI, you can just write the software yourself. So why would you spend money with companies like Salesforce? And so, and if you think like any company of any size, and even a small company, if you could write the software yourself for essentially for nothing, and it's perfectly dedicated. So if you think of, I mean, Microsoft Word is the example of this, right? What do you do with Microsoft Word? You write documents, whatever. But there's millions of features, loads of features that you never use, but you just get them anyway, right? They're totally useless to you. They're distracting, and they probably make the software buggier, slower, more expensive, and all that sort of stuff. You just want to write documents. So in the future, you could very easily just turn around to AI and say, "Here, can you write me a word processor, please?" And it will just it will just create a word processor program, and it'll do exactly what you want. And actually, I need a function that does this, and it will just add in that function for you. So you
or
wouldn't
just
bother.
watch what I do for a week, and then write me a word processor that just has exactly what I need. Yeah,
Yes. And at the same, so you could do, so that's an example, right? So
yeah,
I'm just going to give that so it feels real to you. But you can adapt that or move that to every single business process in a company, which is what Salesforce does. And the AI will just create a piece of software that's perfectly
mm,
designed to meet your needs and doesn't cost you. These pieces of software are not cheap. I mean, Salesforce pulls in a lot of money. So
yeah.
I think that Salesforce are going to be in trouble, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. As it stands, I don't see why. I would imagine if you're a very large company, that one thing that's going to happen over the next 12 or 24 months is you're going to get a list of all of the software that you use, and you're going to put the most expensive piece of software at the top, and you're going to go, I wonder if AI can replace that for me because that's costing me £1 million a month. Let's work on that one first. If we can get that one, that's £1 million a month gone. Now let's move down to the next one. And that's going to impact, I think, companies like Salesforce.
Yeah, interesting. I think, yeah, I think, really good points. I think it will be interesting to see what happens, because I think the Mark Benioff is acutely aware of that. I think from what I was reading, it sounds like he's acutely aware of that. Although I think he's probably more concerned about like smaller companies who spring up who will, do that. But the fact that he's aware of it, and even just the fact that he is pivoting to Agentforce, at least he is looking at what's coming down the line and trying to stay ahead of it. So it'll be interesting to see, is he able to, basically?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Time will tell. But I
Yeah.
think my bets are saying no. Time will
Yeah.
tell.
Uh,
um,
Next one that I would love to chat about, because I know we're going to have a good, robust argument about this.
I feel
And
myself
we've
getting angry
probably had
already.
this. Huh?
I can feel myself getting angry already.
Yeah. And we don't have to spend too long on this, I don't think, because I think we've pretty much had this argument already, probably. But this was where a government test found that AI wildly underperformed compared to human employees. Now,
Not even
that
government
makes it
employees.
that makes it sound very broad. From what I could tell reading it, and I didn't read the entire study or anything, but just the article that I read about it focused very much on AI's ability to summarize. Now, I don't know if that was the extent of the study, but that was certainly what was focused on in what I read. And the thing is, I would tend to agree with them in that the way they did it was they took like a paper or an article or what have you. They had AI summarize it and they had a person summarize it. Then they took the summaries and they blind tested them with humans. So humans then read the two summaries, having read the original document, and they had to say like which summarized it better, basically. And interestingly, in the study, they didn't reveal that AI was involved or anything, but a lot of the assessors immediately were like, "Oh, I feel like this one is AI. It's very wordy, it's bloated, and it's focused on some weird aspects, etc., etc." And so the humans basically came out on top in the task of summarization. And that, to be honest, this doesn't surprise me at all, because I think this is one of the things that you and I have argued about quite a bit, that I have this belief that the human always needs to be able to assess the output. So like, I would not trust AI to summarize something for me that I was not extremely familiar with. I use it for summarization all the time, and I love it, and it's brilliant, and it saves me loads of time, but I only use it to summarize things that I know intimately, whether it's a call that I've had with a client, or notes that I've made for a proposal, or whatever it is. I know the base material intimately, and so the summary is really useful to me, because I can immediately say, okay, that's brilliant, but it's missed this, and it's missed something here, and it's gone off a bit here.
Before we go on to the madness of this so-called study from the Australian government, I just want to point out, right? I came across this example, right? You say that you're you intimately have knowledge of the stuff that you're asking it to summarize. One of the interesting findings from one of the projects that I had heard about was they did this thing where they had phone calls, and the phone calls were transcribed, and then they got the AI to summarize the phone calls. And the people that were on the call, when they looked at the phone summaries, that really, that wasn't, they had written their own summaries and said, well, my impression was this was the main thrust of the phone call and stuff like that. And then when they went through and they compared, listened to the phone call again, and then looked at the summary, actually the AI summary was more correct than their impression, because you're so engaged with the conversation. The AI is like a third person, and so they're a dispassionate observer, and therefore they get a better summary. Whereas you get into a train of thought, and especially in a customer service type scenario, where maybe somebody sort of says to you two or three times, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and you're like, you just get the wrong end of the stick, say, or something like that.
Yeah.
The AI will spot that straight away, whereas you won't. So I think,
That's
look, at AI is, let's just put this to bed, right? AI is brilliant at summarizing documents. It's brilliant at extracting data from documents. It's better than you or I will ever be at doing both of those things. This study, for anybody who's listening, used Llama 2 70B, which sounds boring, and it kind of is, right? It's a model which is old, is small, and I wouldn't trust it to tie my shoelaces, let alone summarize a piece of text, right? It's not a capable model. If you did exactly the same test with Claude 3.5, you would get better results. I also noticed in this article that they had some sort of a rubric, right? It's a scoring system. I also guarantee you, if you gave Claude 3.5 the rubric and the article and then told it to summarize, I think you'd be getting pretty close to not being able to tell the difference. In fact, I think it would do a better job than the human. This looks to me like it's a test that's been deliberately set up by a number of lemons or mandarins or civil servants or whatever they're called these days to try and just slow down the train. And it's so annoying because you'll get people like Gary Marcus and all those types saying, "Oh, there you go. I told you AI was useless at doing this." It's not. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. This is just any technology used poorly will give you poor results. And that's exactly what's happened here. As a practitioner, I find it super frustrating to see people do bad tests like this. This is just a bad test.
I'm not as convinced as you are, but I think we need more data. I think we need more data. We need more studies. But yeah, I would not be as convinced as you that it was just a bad test.
Can I point out another study that came out this week? By the way, I
Yes,
know how they
please.
could have done better. Yeah, yeah. So they did this. They did it again. One of these Turing tests, because this is kind of a Turing test too. So they did a Turing test this week. Again, these Australian lemons should have read this study before they went off doing their thing, and they wanted to get the AI to pretend like it was human to fool humans. So the whole reverse Turing test thing, right? Can you get an AI to pretend like it's human and fool the humans? And you know what the instructions to the AI were, Frank?
Tell us.
The instructions were, don't be too careful. Make sure you make a couple of spelling mistakes, throw in the odd grammatical error, basically act stupider than you really are. And that will fool people into thinking that you're not an AI. And they did it and it worked. And, to me, people are saying, oh, when we get artificial AGI, the AIs are already more intelligent than any single human on the planet. To every measure 10 years ago, we've achieved AGI and gone far beyond it. We're now picking at the jagged edges that we haven't quite solved yet. But anyway, if you want to get AI to be more human, just make it a bit stupider, and that seems to work. So they should have done a bit of that,
That's it's an interesting point, because I actually don't know. It would be interesting to know who was assessing in the study about the synopsizing content. It would be interesting to know who was assessing the content and whether they were actually used to reading that type of synopsis from humans on a regular basis, which also could have skewed the results.
Sure. I mean, I think there's a whole lot of use cases anyway where, I know you've got this one where you get people to, let's say, summarize a call. That's an interesting, but there's millions of use cases then where it's like, read this document and give me, as an accountant, the 10 most important facts out of this. It will do a brilliant job at that. Read these documents as a doctor and tell me the 10 most important medications this person is taking. It will do a brilliant job at that. There's loads of really good, complicated, hard summarization tasks which were unimaginable, 6 or 12 months ago, and are now perfectly doable. So this idea that somebody in Australia does a test on a model that's old and wasn't very good to start with and says, yeah, it's not very good at that. Very disingenuous at best, annoying at worst. That's taken another 6 months off my life, Frank. Thanks.
So quick editorial interjection, because I at the start when we were talking about context windows, so 128K is actually GPT-4o's context window, I think. I think you might be right. I think Google might have actually released the 2 million context window publicly a couple of months ago, maybe. And so Claude would basically have a larger context window than ChatGPT, but not as big as Gemini. However, I think from everything, I have not played around with Gemini that much, but the quality of writing from Gemini, I would not be a huge fan of. Whereas the quality of writing from Claude is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd throw in that editorial correction in there before we chat about our last piece for today, which is the man who's been charged with wire fraud, and I forget what other things he's been charged with, but basically he has been scamming the music streaming services and making an absolute fortune.
Brilliant, Frank. Now I need to know every detail. No detail is too small. What exactly do I need to do?
I think the first detail you have to be aware of is he was caught, and
Okay.
he's looking at 20 years in prison for each of the charges that have been brought against him. And there's several charges
Wow.
against him. Yeah. And what he did was he created hundreds of thousands of AI generated tracks. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. That's fine.
Mhm.
Everyone is perfectly entitled to do that. Then he set up thousands of profiles that were all different bands, and all these bands were releasing, various different tracks. That's probably not okay. I don't know what the terms of service are, or whether that bit is even legal, but that's not what got him into trouble. What got him
What did
into
it in the
trouble
80s and 90s with the, what do you call those guys? Not Crosby, Stills and Nash, but they wrote songs and they had like boy bands a dozen, and it was just the same song, a slightly different way.
yeah.
Remember that? I mean, they did exactly the same. This guy's just doing the same thing with AI.
But what got him
It's
into
not
trouble
Big Waterman.
was
That's what I'm trying to think of.
yeah. But what got him into trouble was he then created, I don't know how many thousands of profiles to listen to his tracks. So he created his own software that would very, very carefully go and listen to music, and it would emulate a human's behavior across all the streaming platforms. And I think he was on all of them. He was on Spotify, he was on Apple, he was on Google. And he had all these profiles going and listening to, in a very kind of human way, very careful to listen to a mix of music, including his, and always very careful not to over listen to his music. And I made some notes here about the money he was making. Let's see, in 2017, in an email to himself, because I assume they must have grabbed his computers and checked his emails, he calculated he could stream his songs 661,000 times daily, earning over $3,000 per day and up to 1.2 million annually. That was in 2017. By 2019, he was earning about $110,000 monthly. And basically, in an email earlier this year, he boasted of reaching 4 billion streams and 12 million in royalties since 2019.
That's
Wow.
fantastic.
I mean,
Wow. Tell me this,
I
Frank.
mean,
I thought Taylor Swift is always moaning, saying that she never gets any money from Spotify. How's this guy able to get millions from streaming it? And the Taylor Swifts of this world say that they're, hard up and they don't have two pennies to rub together.
Taylor Swift is prolific, but does she have hundreds of thousands of tracks?
I can arrange it for her.
She did come. Apparently, people did accuse her of using ChatGPT to write the last album, but she was understandably highly offended.
They get very angry, these artists, so they do. They get very angry. Look, I think that's a brilliant story, Frank. And this time next week, we're going to be millionaires.
Excellent. Let's get a prompting on Suno and Udio immediately.
Frank, we're up on time. It's been another fantastic conversation. It's brilliant. We look forward to doing this again next week.
See you next week. Excellent stuff. Cheers, Justin.
Take it easy.